What is learning assessments? Those necessary evaluations that help us understand student progress were so engaging, so utterly seamless, that the students didn't even realize they were being evaluated. Imagine the revolutionary possibilities for your future elementary classroom. That's the intriguing, transformative thought at the very heart of our deep dive today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm your host, and today we're plunging into the truly fascinating world of game-based assessment, or GBA. This isn't just about bringing games into the classroom for a fun break, though. Let's be honest, there's certainly plenty of joy involved. Instead, we're going to explore how we can harness the immense, often untapped power of well-designed digital games to measure and support learning in ways that are genuinely revolutionary. For you, an elementary education major who's newly interested in game-based learning, our mission today is to unpack how these digital games can become incredibly powerful tools for understanding, enhancing, and even accelerating learning, especially for young, developing minds. We're talking about going beyond simple quizzes to unlock a richer, more dynamic picture of what a child knows and how they learn.
And that's exactly right. We'll explore how this concept fundamentally moves beyond the limitations of traditional, often high-stakes, tests to capture a much richer, more nuanced, and dynamic picture of student progress. This isn't just about getting a score at the end of a unit, it's about continuously observing and understanding a child's learning journey as it unfolds. This can give educators insights into student thinking and skill development that they might never have had before, allowing for far more targeted, personalized, and effective teaching strategies in real time. It's about making assessment an integral part of learning, not something separate or disruptive.
Our primary source material for this deep dive comes from compelling excerpts from a comprehensive chapter in a handbook of game-based learning. This particular section offers a really in-depth look at the cutting-edge research and practical applications of game-based assessment. It's dense, but incredibly insightful, and we're here to distill those key nuggets for you. So, are you ready to unlock the playful promise? Let's get started. Okay, let's truly unpack this. What makes game-based assessment such a compelling idea, particularly for elementary education? Well, the U.S. Department of Education, as far back as 2016, laid out a clear blueprint for educational technology. And it wasn't just about using technology for support like smartboards or online textbooks. Critically, it specifically highlighted its potential for innovative assessment. This wasn't just a passing thought. It was a clear strategic vision for how technology, and particularly games, could fundamentally transform how we understand what students know, what they can do. And even those crucial non-cognitive outcomes like persistence, creativity, or collaborative skills that are so vital to a child's overall development.
What's truly fascinating here is how games, both those specifically designed for educational outcomes and even many commercial games, are seen as such a powerful vehicle for promoting student interest and engagement. Think about your elementary students, how naturally they gravitate towards play. From the moment they can grasp a toy, whether it's building blocks, imaginary play, or now a tablet, they're exploring, experimenting, problem-solving, and constructing their understanding of the world through play. This inherent, almost universal human drive towards play makes games an incredibly compelling and effective medium for learning, unlike almost anything else. Children don't need to be told to play, they want to.
Absolutely. And it's not just about getting kids to sit down and be entertained. The core features embedded within well-designed games inherently align with some very well-established and foundational learning theories that you're likely familiar with. For instance, let's consider constructivism, championed by Jean Piaget. This theory posits that learners actively construct their own understanding and knowledge through experience and reflection on that experience. Games are a perfect fit here. They provide authentic, often open-ended problem-solving scenarios where students aren't just passively receiving information, but actively figuring things out for themselves. Think of a child in a game like Minecraft, needing to figure out how to build a shelter before nightfall. They are constructing knowledge through their actions.
Precisely. Beyond constructivism, games offer adaptive challenges. This means the difficulty can automatically adjust to the player's current skill level, keeping them in that optimal sweet spot where they're challenged just enough to stretch their abilities, but not so much that they become overwhelmed and give up. And critically, games provide ongoing feedback, often immediately and intrinsically linked to the actions the player takes. If you try to jump across a gap and fall, the game instantly tells you that didn't work. This helps players refine their strategies on the fly. These features create environments that align beautifully not only with constructivism, but also with situated learning, a theory put forth by Jean Lavey and Etienne Wenger, which emphasizes that learning occurs best within specific, authentic contexts, much like the simulated worlds games create.
And when these features, the authentic problems, adaptive challenges, and immediate feedback, are masterfully designed, They can create environments that foster what psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi famously called a state of flow. This is that incredibly positive experience of complete absorption, where a child is so deeply focused on an activity like playing a game that they lose all track of time, completely immersed in the challenge. When a child is in that flow state, they're not just having fun, they're deeply engaged cognitively, behaviorally, and even emotionally. They are pushing their own boundaries and truly experiencing the joy of mastery.
What's truly insightful here is how GBA uniquely leverages this state for assessment in a way traditional methods cannot. Traditional tests capture an outcome after learning has theoretically happened. But GBA, by observing them in that flow, can pinpoint the exact moment a concept clicks, the specific strategies they deploy under pressure, or how they adapt when a challenge appears. That's data that tells you not just what they know, but how they're learning, how they approach challenges, and even how they manage frustration, giving you a powerful, granular window into their metacognition.
Right, it's about the process, not just the end result.
Exactly. And this constant engagement and feedback also helps cultivate what Carol Dweck and David Yeager describe as a growth mindset, where effort-driven, challenge-centered competency development flourishes. Imagine a child trying to beat a level, failing multiple times, but immediately trying again, perhaps saying to themselves, "I can do this, I just need to figure out a new strategy." That's a growth mindset in action, fostered organically by the game structure that rewards perseverance and effort over innate ability.
And for an elementary classroom, this is absolutely huge. We're always trying to build that resilience and persistence when a math problem gets tough, or spark creativity in storytelling, or encourage children to think critically about spatial relationships during building activities. Games offer a fun, integrated, and almost invisible way to nurture these vital, non-cognitive skills alongside traditional subjects like early literacy or basic math. It's about developing the whole child in a way that feels natural, engaging, and exciting to them.
It really is. And the sources highlight that games are not just beneficial for academic content, like teaching math facts or reading comprehension. They actually support development in a wide array of competencies that are crucial for life beyond school. We're talking about things like visuospatial abilities. That's understanding and manipulating objects in space, which is critical for everything from geometry to navigating the world attention, cognitive shifting skills. The ability to switch between tasks or strategies, persistence, creativity, and problem solving, and even civic engagement through games that involve community building or ethical choices. All these things are skills that extend far beyond just recalling facts from a textbook.
For an elementary classroom, this is absolutely massive. Think about a shy first grader who typically struggles with group work, leading to them appearing unengaged or lacking collaborative skills on a traditional assessment. But imagine that child immersed in a collaborative GBA where they're working with peers to build a virtual fort or design a community garden. The game could track their initiative in offering ideas, how often they respond constructively to peers, their ability to negotiate roles, or even their persistence in a group challenge when a shared goal seems difficult.
Right. And this granular data, collected invisibly, could reveal that while they're quiet in person, they're a highly effective, persistent, and insightful collaborator in a low-stakes, engaging digital environment. That offers completely new insights for tailored support, allowing you to bridge that gap from virtual engagement to real-world collaboration.
So, given all this incredible potential for engagement and skill development, what exactly is game-based assessment at its core? Simply put, GBA is where a well-designed digital game serves as the primary vehicle to measure how well learners are acquiring specific knowledge and skills, all while actively supporting and enhancing the learning process itself. It's not about giving a separate quiz after a game to see what they learned. It's about the game being the assessment, seamlessly capturing data as they play.
This immediately raises a fascinating and often crucial question for educators. How do you assess without disrupting the fun and deep engagement that games provide? This is where a key concept called stealth assessment comes in. It's defined as evidence-based assessment woven directly and invisibly into the game environment. The brilliance here is that students are deeply engaged in complex, authentic tasks within the game, and as they interact, they produce a rich sequence of actions, every choice, every move, every success or failure. These actions provide the very evidence needed to assess their skills, all captured in the background, typically in log files, without the student ever knowing they're being evaluated or that their play is being analyzed for assessment purposes.
Exactly. It's not about deception. Let's be absolutely clear on that. It's about seamlessly capturing meaningful data from student actions during complex tasks so that the assessment is an inherent organic part of the play itself. No more stop the game for a pop quiz. End quote. The true value here is that by removing the explicit pressure of a formal test, students often perform more authentically, revealing their true understanding, their natural problem-solving strategies, and even their intrinsic motivation, rather than just their ability to perform under high-stakes test conditions. This approach uses a principal framework called evidence-centered design, or ECD, to create these sophisticated conceptual and computational models that are just naturally embedded into the game.
Hmm. And if we connect this to the bigger picture for you, as an elementary educator, GBA provides ongoing assessment from a continuous stream of data, rather than just discrete points from traditional, often one-off, standardized tests given only a few times a year. This means you can monitor a student's learning progression over time, seeing how their skills develop, how their strategies evolve, and how their understanding deepens, rather than just getting a snapshot of their performance on a single day. This continuous feedback loop for the teacher is incredibly powerful, allowing for truly responsive teaching.
It truly is. Beyond that, GBA can measure things that are often incredibly hard for traditional paper and pencil tests to capture effectively. Think about collaboration skills in a group project, the specific step-by-step problem-solving strategies a child uses when faced with a novel challenge, or their persistence when encountering a difficult obstacle. These are crucial competencies, especially for young learners, that are almost impossible to quantify accurately on a bubble sheet or a short answer test. Plus, another huge practical benefit is that GBA can save a significant amount of time normally spent by educators on administering, proctoring, and scoring tests, freeing up more precious classroom time for actual teaching, individualized instruction, and building those crucial relationships with students. That's a massive win for any elementary teacher.
Definitely. Saves time, gives richer data.
So we've outlined the playful promise of GBA. But for many, the natural question that follows is, okay, this sounds amazing, but how does it actually work? How do researchers and designers build these invisible assessments that can reveal so much about a child's learning? And that, my friend, is where the science truly comes into play, starting with something called evidence-centered design, or ECD. This isn't just a buzzword. It's the foundational blueprint for creating effective GBA.
In a nutshell, ECD helps designers specify exactly what competencies they want to assess. Then they identify what observable behaviors will reveal those competencies within the game. And finally, what tasks within the game will elicit those specific behaviors. Think of it like a meticulous blueprint for understanding what a student knows by systematically watching what they do. For example, if you want to assess a child's understanding of fractions, an ECD approach wouldn't just give them a multiple-choice question. It would design a game where, to progress, they have to visually divide objects into equal parts, combine fractional quantities, or perhaps share virtual pizza among friends. The game would then observe precisely how they manipulate those elements, how many attempts they make, and whether their actions align with correct fractional reasoning. This level of detail is a game changer.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So it's about linking what you want to know to what they actually do in the game.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. And while it's a bit more on the technical side, the analogy will make it clear, I promise. ECD often uses something called Bayesian networks, or BNs. These are like a sophisticated, ever-learning detective for each student. They are statistical models that represent a set of variables and their conditional dependencies, constantly calculating the probability that a student understands a certain concept or is proficient in a specific skill.
Probability. So it's not just yes or no, they get it or they don't.
Precisely. BNs generate conditional probabilities of a student's competencies and continuously update those beliefs dynamically in real time. As a child plays, the game collects continuous data points on their actions, every choice, every movement, every success or failure, every hesitation. The Bayesian network then continuously adjusts its estimate of their skill level in real time. If a child makes a correct move, the probability of their understanding of that concept goes up. If they struggle or make an error, that probability adjusts downwards. It's like a living, breathing assessment that adapts to every piece of evidence, giving you a far more nuanced and immediate picture of their evolving abilities than any static, traditional test could. You're not waiting for a quiz score. You're watching learning unfold, moment by moment.
Let's try a simple analogy for you, thinking about your elementary classroom. Imagine you're observing a child building with Legos. Traditional assessment might be a checklist at the end. Did they build a stable tower? Yes, no. Okay, simple enough. GBA with Bayesian networks is like having a super observant assistant who notices every single block placed, every hesitation before they commit to a decision, every successful connection, and even every time they try something that doesn't quite work and then self-correct. This assistant is continuously updating a detailed picture of their fine motor skills, their spatial reasoning abilities, and even their persistence when a tower keeps falling down. If they hesitate often on complex connections, the BN might lower the probability of high spatial reasoning and raise the probability of needs more practice and planning. If they quickly recover from a failed attempt, their persistence score rises. And is doing all of this silently, giving you a detailed, evolving profile, all while the child just thinks they're having fun building with Legos. They literally don't know they're being assessed in such a deep and continuous way. And the beauty is, it's flexible. If the child shows a sudden leap in understanding after a moment of insight, the network instantly updates that rather than waiting for the next quarterly test.
That's a perfect, tangible way to visualize it. This sophisticated approach means GBA using ECD is incredibly well suited for assessing a wide range of complex cognitive skills that are notoriously difficult to capture with traditional paper and pencil tests. The source highlights things like scientific inquiry, where students explore hypotheses and conduct virtual experiments, systems thinking, understanding how different parts of a system interact, creativity in solving open-ended problems, and complex problem-solving strategies.
And it also assesses core content knowledge in subjects like mathematics, physics, and biology. So while a research study might look at a middle school physics game like Physics Playground, measuring understanding of qualitative physics principles, the underlying principles of ECD and Bayesian networks apply directly to how an elementary math game could assess a young child's number sense, their understanding of basic addition and subtraction concepts, their grasp of geometry as they navigate a virtual world and identify shapes, or even their early algebraic thinking. The underlying methodology is incredibly powerful and transferable across subjects and age groups.
Absolutely. It's about the framework, not just the specific subject.
Okay, so that's the how. But the next big question is always, does it actually work? Is it reliable? Is it valid? For any assessment to be truly useful, whether it's a paper and pencil test or sophisticated game, it has to be valid. I mean, it actually measures what it claims to measure. You wouldn't want a math test to primarily measure reading comprehension, for instance. And it also has to be reliable. I mean, it consistently produces similar results under similar conditions. Researchers validate GBA by looking at how in-game measures correlate significantly with external traditional tests, which is known as convergent validity. It's how we build trust in these new innovative assessment methods.
Exactly. A great example comes from Physics Playground, a game where players solve physics puzzles by drawing objects to guide a ball to a target. A study showed that in-game measures, like the number of trophies earned for efficient solutions and the time a student spent persistently working on a task, correlated significantly with external traditional physics test scores. This is that convergent validity in action. Different measures pointing to the same underlying learning and competence. It builds strong trust in the game's ability to assess accurately, showing that the engaging play isn't just fun, but also a legitimate window into a child's understanding.
And crucially for you, an elementary education major, studies have specifically looked at math. One study on a puzzle game designed to teach and assess math found that students' pre-test scores predicted their game scores, which then, in turn, significantly predicted their post-test scores, even when controlling for their initial knowledge. This suggests a clear learning progression being accurately captured by the game itself. Even more directly relevant, Roberts, Chung, and Parks in 2016 designed a website with a series of math games specifically for children. They embedded learning analytics within these games to track indicators like the correctness of responses while children were actively playing. The in-game analytics from these elementary math games significantly correlated with scores from standardized math tests. This wasn't just a theoretical connection, it was a proven link in the elementary classroom context.
This tells us something incredibly important. The data games collect can genuinely and accurately reflect a child's understanding of academic content. This makes GBA a trustworthy tool for educators because it's not just about the final answer a child gives on a worksheet, it's about observing the process of getting there, their strategy, their engagement, and their problem-solving approach. That's a much richer and more actionable picture for an educator than a single static test score. Imagine knowing why a child struggled, not just that they struggled.
Beyond just content knowledge, GBA can measure crucial non-cognitive skills that are vital for lifelong learning and success, like persistence. In the Physics Playground game, indicators like the average time spent on unsolved problems or the number of times a student revisited and tried to resolve a problem they initially failed correlated significantly with external measures of persistence and even, interestingly, with physics post-test scores. This shows a direct, measurable link between sticking with a challenge in a game and overall learning outcomes in a traditional academic sense.
Think about your first graders trying to solve a tricky word problem, or a second grader struggling with a multi-step math problem. On a typical day, you might not notice every time they pause, try a new approach, or return to a problem after feeling stuck. But being able to track their persistence, how long they stick with it, how many different approaches they try before giving up, how often they revisit a problem they couldn't solve initially all through a game, could provide invaluable insights for tailored support. You could proactively identify students who need encouragement to persevere before they even ask for help, or understand which teaching strategies are most effective at building grit. This is data that informs not just what to teach, but how to teach it and how to support the developing learner.
One of GBA's most powerful and perhaps underestimated features is its ability to provide timely, individualized feedback, often without any explicit instructional interruption. It's like the game itself is a smart, patient tutor, always there, subtly guiding the student, without them even realizing they're getting a personalized lesson.
That's absolutely right. Well-designed GBA can provide specific learning supports at just the right moment, almost magically. Based on a learner's performance captured by the stealth assessment, the game can automatically adjust task difficulty, making it a little easier if they're struggling, or a bit harder if they're breezing through a concept, or offer individualized feedback that profoundly enhances learning, especially for struggling learners who might otherwise fall behind. This adaptability is key for meeting the wonderfully diverse needs you'll encounter in any elementary classroom, ensuring every child is challenged at their optimal level.
We have some great classroom examples of this embedded feedback from the source material. Huang, and Wu in 2014 designed a math game for second graders where students answer questions about buying goods. They created two versions. One provided timely diagnostic feedback hints or explicit explanations when errors occurred, while the other didn't. The results were clear and powerful. The students who received that instant diagnostic feedback showed significantly higher post-test scores. This is more than just telling them wrong answer, it's guiding them to the right thinking.
This really shows how games can help students learn directly and immediately from their mistakes by providing instructional support tailored precisely to the type of error they made. Imagine that instant aha moment for a child when they make a mistake, and the game immediately gives them a gentle clue, highlights a relevant piece of information, or explains in a simple animation why their answer was wrong, without a teacher needing to intervene every single time. It's personalized, on-demand learning, giving children the chance to self-correct and deepen their understanding autonomously, fostering true independence.
Another fascinating study by Wang in 2008 compared different types of formative assessments in a 2-week biology course for fifth graders. One of the conditions involved a web-based quiz game-like assessment where students could press a button to get hints, although the use of hints was limited to prevent overuse and encourage genuine effort. Post-hoc analysis showed that students in the GBA condition had significantly higher post-test scores compared to those who used traditional paper and pencil tests or a web-based test without the gamified elements. It wasn't just about getting the answer, it was about the process of learning within the game.
The gamified quiz in that study motivated these fifth graders to actively refer to external resources and even approach teachers for clarifications, something they might not have done with a traditional quiz. This points directly to the intrinsic motivation that games can provide, making the learning process more active, more self-directed, and frankly, more enjoyable. Instead of passively receiving information or dreading a quiz, the students were engaged, curious, and actively seeking out knowledge and understanding. That's a key goal in elementary education, fostering independent, curious learners who are excited to discover.
So beyond just measuring, GBA can do something truly unique. It can help us understand how students learn, identifying subtle patterns and specific factors that lead to successful learning. It's about getting incredibly granular insight into the learning process itself, almost like having a microscope on a child's brain as they tackle a new concept.
That's precisely it. Researchers have analyzed scientific inquiry behaviors in middle school students using virtual environments. They identified specific behavioral patterns that consistently predicted successful learning outcomes. For instance, the time students spent actively engaged with information pages within the virtual environment, or the frequency with which they visited a virtual science lab to run tests and observe phenomena, were strong indicators that linked to a student's final correct answers and their successful identification of causal relationships. This offers a powerful window into the learning strategies that are most effective for different types of students.
Right. And for an elementary teacher, observing these kinds of behaviors, and like how often a child revisits a reading passage or how many different tools they try in a virtual construction game, could reveal crucial insights into their evolving metacognitive skills.
Exactly. And a study with Physics Playground really went deep, modeling not just what students learned, but how persistence, incoming knowledge, and even emotional states like engagement and frustration influenced their learning outcomes. They found that a student's engagement and their level of frustration actually mediated the relationship between their prior knowledge and their in-game performance.
Mediated. What does that mean exactly?
It means a student's starting knowledge was important, sure, but how engaged or frustrated they felt during the game played an even more significant role in how well they performed in the game and, subsequently, how much they truly learned. A child with high prior knowledge but low engagement might learn less than a child with moderate prior knowledge but intense engagement. Engagement and managing frustration were key intervening factors.
Wow. Okay. So it's not just about what they know coming in, but how they feel and act while learning.
Precisely. And this has huge implications for instructional design, especially for our elementary learners. It suggests the critical importance of creating adaptive tasks that consistently challenge students just a little beyond their current proficiency level, what Vygotsky referred to as the zone of proximal development. This careful balance maintains that desirable flow state we discussed earlier and critically prevents excessive frustration. If a game is too easy, children get bored and disengage. If it's too hard, they get frustrated, give up, and potentially develop a negative association with the subject. The right balance, adaptively achieved through GBA, is vital for maintaining enthusiasm, curiosity, and a sustained love for learning in young children. It literally keeps them in the learning sweet spot.
The quality of a game-based assessment, like any assessment, depends heavily on its underlying framework, like ECD, and its psychometric properties. That's basically how reliable and valid it is. Reliability means that if the student took a similar assessment again, or even the same one, they'd get consistent results. You want a test that's a steady thermometer of their skills, not a flickering light. And validity, as we discussed, means it's truly measuring what you think it's measuring, not just test-taking skills or reading comprehension on a math test. The source highlights the task variables, things like the format of a question, say a multiple-choice math problem versus a word problem that requires drawing a diagram or building a solution, can significantly affect what kind of information you get from a student's response. A multiple choice might just tell you if they picked the right answer, but a word problem within a game can show you their full problem-solving process and potentially reveal challenges with reading comprehension, which is a separate skill.
Another fascinating factor that influences GBA quality, and this speaks directly to the art of game design, is features like linearity versus non-linearity and how levels are unlocked. In Physics Playground, for example, they found that how levels were structured either a strictly linear progression where you complete level 1 to unlock 2, or a non-linear progression where players could choose which levels they wanted to tackle next, actually affected whether students aimed for efficient gold trophy solutions or just enough to pass, gaining silver trophies. If the goal was just to progress, players might take the easiest path. But if the design encouraged exploration and optimization through choice, it fostered deeper problem solving.
So choice matters. This tells us that for elementary games, how we structure the game, whether kids have choices in their path or follow a very set progression, can profoundly influence their learning strategies and the depth of their engagement. If the game's primary goal is just to pass a level, they might take the path of least resistance. But if the design encourages exploration, experimentation, and optimization, it can foster the development of much deeper problem-solving and critical thinking skills. It reinforces the idea that game design isn't just cosmetic. It's absolutely fundamental to the assessment's effectiveness and the very learning behaviors it promotes. It's about designing for the learning you want to see. The design is the pedagogy, in a way. So after all this theoretical discussion, these broad examples, what does this all mean for a specific popular game that many of you might even have on your phone? Let's look at Plants vs. Zombies 2 and how researchers actually embedded a truly ingenious stealth assessment for problem-solving skills right within it. This study, led by Shute, Wang, and colleagues in 2016, is a fantastic, concrete, real-world example of GBA in action, showing you how invisible assessment really works.
Plants vs. Zombies 2 is a widely popular, engaging 2D game where players strategically guard their houses against invading zombies using various types of plants, each with unique abilities. It's a fantastic vehicle for GBA because it inherently requires strategic thinking, careful resource management, planning, and adapting to dynamic challenges, all of which are core components of complex problem solving. Players have to manage their sun currency, choose the right plants for the right types of zombies, and optimize their defenses across different levels and scenarios. It's an ideal environment for observation because every action is a decision.
And the researchers meticulously applied that evidence-centered design framework we talked about to PVZ2. First, they constructed a detailed competency model for problem solving, breaking it down into 4 key facets. First, analyzing givens and constraints of the problem, understanding what they have and what the zombies can do. Second, planning a solution pathway, deciding where and when to place plants. Third, using tools and resources effectively and efficiently, choosing the right plants and placing them optimally. And fourth, monitoring and evaluating progress, seeing if their strategy is working and adapting if it's not. So they weren't just looking at a general problem-solving score, but rather assessing specific, measurable sub-skills that contribute to overall problem-solving ability.
They then identified very specific in-game indicators, the observables for each facet. These were the actual player actions that would reveal their proficiency. For instance, to measure using tools effectively and efficiently, one incredibly clever indicator they tracked was whether a player planted an iceberg lettuce, which temporarily freezes zombies, near a snapdragon, which attacks by breathing fire.
Here's the kicker and why this is so brilliant. An iceberg lettuce's freezing effect is canceled by the snapdragon's fire. So planting them together is an incredibly ineffective, even counterproductive strategy. It essentially wastes resources and provides no benefit. The game invisibly tracked the ratio of times a player made this inefficient choice compared to their total iceberg lettuce placements. It wasn't about a single mistake, but a pattern of inefficient strategy.
Exactly. The higher the ratio of iceberg lettuce near snapdragon placements, the lower the associated problem-solving competency level for that specific using tools effectively and efficiently facet. This ratio then feeds into those Bayesian networks we discussed earlier, dynamically updating the assessment of the player's problem-solving skill without them ever seeing a question or a score pop up related to problem-solving efficiency. It's like observing a child repeatedly trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, even though there's a perfectly good square hole next to it. The game silently registers that as a specific challenge with shape recognition or problem-solving flexibility. And the Bayesian network updates that specific probability in the child's profile. The child just keeps playing, immersed in the fun, but the game is building a detailed, dynamic profile of their strategic thinking, their adaptability, and their efficiency.
And the researchers confirmed the validity of the stealth assessment by comparing its in-game estimates of problem-solving skill to 2 external established gold standard problem-solving tests. Raven's progressive matrices, which involves inferring rules from visual patterns, and micro-DYN, which assesses how students recognize relationships among variables and apply rules in dynamic systems. The significant correlation between the in-game measures from Plants vs. Zombies 2 and these external tests showed that it was indeed measuring what it claimed to, genuine transferable problem-solving skills, not just how good someone is at that particular game.
This example truly highlights the incredible power and sophistication of stealth assessment in GBA. You have a detailed competency model built on a strong conceptual foundation, specific scoring rubrics for in-game performance that capture nuance, a seamless embedding of assessment directly into the game's natural play, timely feedback opportunities that are part of the play itself, and the ability to concurrently assess multiple skills and sub-skills simultaneously. It's a comprehensive approach to understanding learning within the authentic context of engaging play, moving us far beyond simple right or wrong answers.
This deep dive into game-based assessment has, I hope, truly illuminated its immense potential. From a theoretical perspective, GBA's ability to measure and support learning simultaneously without disruption is a major paradigm-shifting departure from traditional assessment models. It literally allows for continuous, real-time monitoring of learning progression, giving educators a constant pulse on student understanding rather than just a periodic, often delayed checkup.
And this approach is uniquely suited to assess those complex 21st century skills like problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, and collaboration, which are notoriously difficult to capture accurately and authentically with traditional paper and pencil tests. Because the assessment mechanism is built directly into the game, there's an inherent alignment between the learning objectives and the actual tasks students are performing. This ensures that what you're measuring is genuinely what you're trying to teach and what the students are truly learning, creating a powerful feedback loop for both the learner and the educator.
Beyond the exciting theory, GBA offers incredibly crucial practical benefits that could transform your day-to-day teaching in the elementary classroom. Think about the direct, tangible impact it could have.
An accurate and dynamic GBA can enable incredibly timely and precise scaffolding for every student. Imagine a third-grade math game where a student is consistently struggling with a specific type of multiplication fact. Instead of just getting them wrong and feeling defeated, the GBA instantly recognizes the pattern of error, gently scales back the difficulty to, say, reviewing their addition and subtraction family facts, or offers a brief visual mini lesson on array models before reintroducing multiplication at a slightly simpler level. For another student who's breezing through, it might immediately introduce multi-digit multiplication or word problems that require applying those facts in more complex scenarios. This isn't just basic differentiation, it's dynamic, real-time scaffolding tailored to each child's just right challenge, keeping them motivated, engaged, and learning at their optimal pace. This is invaluable in a classroom with diverse learning needs.
It's also important that learners and teachers can easily access diagnostic data from GBA. This allows students to monitor their own progress, seeing how they've improved in, say, spatial reasoning within a virtual world, or their strategic planning in a resource management game. And crucially, it helps teachers figure out precisely when and how to intervene, or which specific students might need extra one-on-one support in a particular skill without waiting for the next unit test. This data can transform remediation from guesswork into precise, data-driven action.
This brings us to a very important point about data and its use, especially when dealing with the sensitive information of young children. While the potential for data-rich insights is immense, questions about how student data is protected, who owns that data, and for how long it's stored are paramount. For elementary students, this means policies must be incredibly clear on data anonymization, on obtaining truly informed consent from parents, perhaps through easily understandable interfaces, and ensuring that all data collected is used purely for educational benefit, never for marketing or other commercial purposes. It's about building trust, both with the children themselves and their families, that this powerful tool is used solely for their growth and well-being, always with their best interests at heart. This will require educators, policymakers, and game designers to collaborate closely, perhaps even developing industry-wide standards, to ensure we build a future for GBA that is both incredibly powerful and ethically protective.
Absolutely. Ethics and privacy have to be front and center. And to truly integrate teaching, learning, and assessment in this profound way, the source stresses that close, multidisciplinary collaboration during GBA design is absolutely key. This means game designers, researchers, psychometricians, who are experts in educational measurement and validity, and subject matter experts, like experienced elementary teachers, all working hand in hand from the very beginning.
Imagine elementary teachers collaborating directly with game designers to ensure the GBA aligns perfectly, not just with abstract curriculum goals, but with the specific developmental needs and real-world challenges faced by young children in their classrooms. This multidisciplinary approach is critical for creating effective GBA tools for schools, making sure the games are not just fun and engaging, but genuinely educational, accurate, and fair in their assessment of learning. It ensures the tools are truly fit for purpose.
While GBA is incredibly promising and groundbreaking, it still has limitations that researchers are actively working to address. For instance, the theoretical boundary between GBA and other simulation-based assessments isn't always perfectly clear, and there's a need for more theoretical clarity to standardize terminology and approaches. Also, processing massive, complex gameplay data, especially for collaborative activities where multiple students are interacting simultaneously and generating torrents of data, remains a significant computational and analytical challenge. How do you disentangle individual contributions from group dynamics?
Another critical area for future research and development is reusability and cost-effectiveness. Building a good GBA is a time-consuming, expensive, and often highly domain-specific endeavor. Can we develop frameworks or platforms that make them more adaptable, so a GBA developed for one math concept can be easily tweaked for another, or perhaps modified for a different game entirely? And vitally, the question of fairness is paramount. Ensuring GBA doesn't inadvertently favor certain populations over others, like boys over girls, or experienced gamers over novices who might struggle with game mechanics even if they understand the academic content. This is especially crucial in elementary settings where we strive to benefit every student equally, regardless of their background or prior gaming experience, and avoid creating a digital divide in assessment. We need to ensure equitable access and unbiased measurement for all.
The vision, however, is clear and compelling. A future filled with high-quality, dynamic, game-based assessments that are not only deeply engaging but also adaptive to individual student needs, providing continuous, rich insights, and powerfully supporting learning, transforming the very nature of assessment in the classroom. So we've gone on quite the journey today, from understanding the core concept of game-based assessment to exploring its scientific underpinnings with evidence-centered design and Bayesian networks, delving into real-world examples like Plants vs. Zombies 2, and finally considering its profound implications, both theoretical and practical, for teaching and learning in your future elementary classroom.
For an elementary educator like you, GBA truly offers a path to profoundly individualized assessment and support. It transforms what children love to do play into a powerful engine for deeper, more authentic learning and comprehensive skill development. It's about making assessment a positive, integrated, and almost invisible part of the learning experience itself, fostering both knowledge and a love for learning.
Consider this. If we can seamlessly assess complex problem-solving and strategic thinking in a commercially popular game like Plants vs. Zombies, what other foundational skills, from collaborative storytelling to early scientific inquiry, developing empathy through role-playing scenarios, or even fostering crucial social-emotional intelligence, could we be invisibly nurturing and precisely measuring in your future classroom, all while students are simply lost in the joy and wonder of play? The possibilities are truly limitless.